When it comes to a business credit, a lot has changed in the last 40 years. Okay, and but the major let's say element here is that 40 years ago, a lot of small business owners, including startup owners, didn't have the possibility to get funded. Nowadays, you have so many platforms that are there to really help you out. It's wonderful. Okay, so here's an overview I want you to really pay attention to. One thing I want to really I want to say here is that when it comes to business credit, you have to understand that you have a lot of middlemen, a lot of intermediaries, if you will. You have those platforms, you have the fintechs, you have the small business administration, and you have a lot of players besides the traditional lenders. Okay, so don't think that business credit you have to really go to a bank or a credit union to get business credit necessarily. You have alternative ways to actually get business credit nowadays. Okay, and by the way, you can also get the trade lines, the net 30 trade lines through online accounts. You don't have to go through those banks anymore. So that's the big change. Okay, but before I actually get into the nitty gritty, let me explain to you what business credit really is conceptually, the concept of business credit. And the funny thing is, this hasn't changed in the last 40 years. It's still the same thing. So extended business credit is actually to be used for strictly business purposes. In other words, you, the business owner, you can't use the credit to pay for personal expenses or items. In other words, you can't use the cash to go to Cancun or just chill somewhere in South Africa. No, you gotta really use the cash for business purposes. And business credit, actually, in the last 40 years, conceptually, it has remained the same thing. In other words, it is available in many forms, including credit cards, loans, and lines of credit to cover routine expenses or fund growth initiatives. Okay, so this is important to really remember. For instance, if you think of lines of credit, you can use them to cover operational expenses, not to purchase assets. Ideally, a credit card will be used for the same purpose, but might be used to purchase lower cost assets like computers and office equipment. Okay. And also, one thing I want to say is that in the last 40 years, you have seen a clear distinction between business credit and personal credit. Back in the days, personal credit used to be quote unquote confused sometimes with business credit, but nowadays you have multiple ways to differentiate those two elements really clearly. I mean, there's no more room for confusion anymore. And that's really good. That's really fantastic. So what I've seen in the last 40 years of business credit is that basically you had to, for you to really establish business credit, for you to build business credit, you want to start with having a separate entity. And this hasn't changed. Maybe the variety of entities have changed. It has actually increased because back then we didn't have the S corporation, but the S corporation was introduced. Okay, so you have this extra layer. But the thing is, you want to really distance yourself from the sole proprietorship type of business. If you are trying to build business credit, you do not want to be a sole proprietorship. Okay, you want to be an LLC. You want to be an S corporation. You want to be a C corporation. You want to be an LLP. You want to be whatever, but to not really remain as a sole proprietorship. As a matter of fact, a lot of people think that to be a business, you got to really be to actually get a business credit card, you got to be a business. No, you can be a sole proprietorship and still get a business credit card, but you do not want to really remain in that capacity. Okay, and so you want to really make sure that you have limited personal liability or even absent personal liability. Why? Because the sole proprietorship type of setup really exposes you to unlimited personal liability, and this hasn't changed in the last 40 years, by the way. Okay, so you do not want to really be in that position. What I've seen in the last 40 years also is that when it comes to business credit, you want to really get an EIN from the IRS. Uh, back in the days, there wasn't such a thing as an EIN. Like 20 or 30 years ago, there was not a concept of EIN. So the IRS introduced the employer identification number concept a few years ago, and that was really good because it really helped a lot of business owners differentiate between the entity they are running, the business they're running, and their personal affairs. So something were to happen, for instance, they know that their butt is covered when it comes to lawsuits or whatever. Okay, they can't lose personal assets. If they have to lose something, they can only lose business assets. So that's pretty good. The introduction of the EIN concept is has been a great development in the last 40 years, and the IRS has done a great job at making sure that all small business owners have an EIN, at least those who want to have one. What I've seen in the last 40 years of business credit is that you really want to have a business bank account. You want to open a business bank account, and this will help you establish an extra layer of protection, an extra layer of differentiation between your personal affairs and your business affairs. Back in the days, a lot of business owners, especially the mom and pop stores, whatever, they were comfortable just running their business from their personal bank account because it was too complicated to actually do both, and you didn't have the specialized sort of technology that you have nowadays with the likes of Wave, Zero, or QuickBooks. You didn't have that technology back then to really track expenses at the let's say at the business bank account level and at the personal bank account level. So a lot of entrepreneurs were just sort of mingling their personal affairs with their business affairs. Okay, so what you want to do nowadays, if you want to really build business credit real fast, is to open a business bank account. Okay, so that you can really separate expenses, you can separate business expenses from personal expenses. That's important because this will add an extra layer of credibility to your business, but also an extra layer of protection. Should something were to happen, like let's say you have a lawsuit or whatever. In law, it's called having corporate veil, and you do not want to pierce. You do not want to pierce the corporate veil. And also, what you want to do is that you want to really establish a business address and phone number. And this is something I've seen the last 40 years. You have a lot of platforms nowadays, including Google My Business, that allow you to really establish a separate business entity. And I'm talking about a professional way to really to a professional way to, if you will, to really have brand exposure. Okay, so make sure you establish a business address and phone number, and you don't even have to really have technicians come to your office anymore. Nowadays, you have business phone services such as Uma, you have Go to Connect, you have Nextiva, you have all those players actually helping you big time, and they'll do things remotely, and you can keep working anyway. Okay, you don't have to have a hardware phone services anymore. In the last 40 years, when it came to business credit, one thing that wasn't there that's now here today was the preeminence, was the emergence, big time, of Dun and Bradstreet. Back in the days, I mean, Dun and Bradstreet was still a fledgling company trying to really prove itself. Okay, but nowadays, Dun and Bradstreet is so preeminent, so powerful that you gotta have a Dun's number. If you're serious about having business credit, you got to have a DUNS number. I mean, a couple of years ago, a DUNS number was even required to actually apply for a government contract. Okay, but nowadays the government has come up with another reference number, so you don't have to really go through Dun and Bradstreet's anymore to actually apply for a government contract. But still, in the private sphere, Dun and Bradstreet remains a very a key player, a pivotal player. So you want to apply for a Dun and Bradstreet DUNS number. By the way, that application is very easy, very fast. You don't have to pay anything. It's cheap. It's not cheap. It's free. But you just have to really do. Those are things you have to do anyway, just to make sure that you're not really applying for business credit, and all of a sudden you don't have a DUNS number, and you have to think about getting it. You also want to use a company credit card, okay? So make sure that you are using the company credit card, not your personal credit cards. And you want to close your hands, and you want to close, not close your hand. You want to close your eyes and make sure that the credit card issuer is reporting your data to let's say to Dun and Bradstreet, okay, to Experian Business, but also to Equifax Business. That way, you can really build business credit because your Paydex score, in the context of Dun and Bradstreet, for example, is going to go up if you register a lot of positive payment histories, or let's just say that your CUR, your credit utilization ratio, is actually ideally below 30%. That's what you want anyway. You want your CUR to be below 30% to actually increase your personal credit score, but also your business credit score. So that's really fantastic. What I've seen in the last 40 years when it comes to business credit is that the ability to make payment on time, this actually hasn't changed a lot. Okay, 40 years ago, making payments on time all the time was important as it is today. This is one of the few things that hasn't changed. Okay, if you want to really build business credit, if you want to be credit worthy, if you want to really have if you want to have a positive credit history, you want to really make your payments on time, and you want to make sure that your suppliers know that you are actually making payments on time. In other words, you want to make sure your records with the credit bureaus are actually adjusted to reflect this sort of discipline. Okay, so the entire point of credit history is to actually establish your future credit worthiness and reliability as a company. So everything depends on your company making payments on time and as a grade. Any deviation, regardless of cause, such as slow payments, partial payments, or no payments, can damage your company's financial health for years. And also your credit score, by the way. And I'm speaking here about different kinds of credit score. You have your Dun and Bradstreet, you have your Equifax business credit score, and then you have your Experian business credit score. Next, one thing I've seen in the last 40 years is that if you want to really establish business credit, you want to really work with vendors that report payments. I mean, it's one of those things where 20 years ago, 25 years ago, not a lot of vendors would report your data to the credit bureaus. Okay, but nowadays there's more, let's say more selection. There is more sort of mixture. There's more diversity. There's a lot of opportunities. Okay, so you want to establish credit with a supplier or vendor that reports payments to credit agencies. Otherwise, you just be working for nothing. Okay, you want them to really report your great, let's say your great habit of making payments on time. Okay, and just make sure that you talk to the vendor and ask them if they actually report. You want them to report because that's the way you are actually asking for. It's not a favor, but you are just making sure they are reporting your good data, your good credit data to future partners of yours. I mean, who knows? I mean, to the public as well. In the last 40 years of business credit knowledge, I've seen that basically the trade references that you have are going to be quite essential, especially if you report them promptly to Dun and Bradstreet. Okay, don't really wait before reporting. I mean, getting a trade reference nowadays is a lot easier than it used to be a couple of years ago. And but so you have the possibility to reach out to like everybody offers now trade references. You have even digital marketing agencies. You have online marketing agencies that offer business credit to employers, to new businesses. So you want to really be in a situation where you are increasing your credit score by talking to the right people, right? That's important. And so get supply trade references to Dun and Bradstreet. Just because you have them, you want to make sure that they're being reported, and that's something I've seen really the last 40 years. You also want to monitor business credit scores and ratings. Nowadays, thank God, it's just a lot easier to periodically check your business credit scores and ratings with the various credit reporting agencies to ensure there are no mistakes or problems, right? So your company may also want to pay for, let's say, a regular monitoring through one of the credit reporting agencies that also tracks other agencies such as Experian or Equifax. Okay, and what I want to say is that you have the possibility to get things done very, 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 very well. And this is one of those things where you gotta be sure that it is actually working in your favor. Okay. Now, bear in mind, however, that if you pay a trade reference late, that negative information also goes in your file. Okay. And so that's something to really think about, especially in the long run, if you are trying to establish some kind of how do I say it, some kind of routine, some kind of history. Then you have to really have the right approach. I mean, now and forever. One thing I've seen in the last 40 years when it comes to a business credit is that the importance of separating personal finances from business finances has actually gone up big time. A lot of companies nowadays have tools in place. They have a system in place to make sure they do not mingle personal finances with business finances, and that's important. And see, the thing is, when you actually open a business bank account and you are able to get an EIN from the IRS, then actually making this sort of switch is very easy. It's relatively easy. You are able to track things a lot more often. Okay, so think about getting a business bank account from a reputable bank. Okay, and you want to borrow responsibly. So borrow responsibly. For the last 20 years, I've seen a lot of changes. But one thing I want to say is that borrowing responsibly is going to change you. It's going to help you stay in business all the time. Okay, you want to really borrow responsibly. You want to get things done responsibly. You want to really talk to the talk to the right stakeholders in a responsible manner. That's going to help you big time on making sure that you are really reaching your goals too. And one thing I want to say also is that you have the possibility to get things done a certain way, but just remember that if you are trying to borrow, to trying to borrow responsibly, you want to keep in mind some essential financial KPIs, right? So you have, for instance, your ability to exist without business credit, but most importantly, your going concern. That's going to help you big time understand whether or not you really have some kind of going concern. Let me give you a few extras here. In the last 20 years, 25 years, what I've seen is that business credit actually below the surface, you have a variety of business credit types. So you have regular financing, you have vendor and supplier relationships. You have also the ability to protect things from your personal credit. Okay, and one thing I want to say here is that when it comes to a business credit, you want to make sure that you monitor your Paydex score, that you monitor your other business credit scores. That way, you know what's working and what's not working. It's don't really wait for them to don't wait for your partners, your key stakeholders to tell you how to do things, but just make sure that you have yourself a way to track things and see what works and what doesn't work. What I want to say also is that when you think about the business credit in the last 20 to 40 years, you have the possibility to actually get all kinds of business credit, business trade lines. You have Dun and Bradstreet. You have also you have Dun and Bradstreet. Okay. You also have Equifax. You have Experian. But most importantly, you have the ability to get business credit from credit card stacking lenders, for instance. Okay, this is something that not a lot of folks talk about, but this is there and really can help you big time also. And so, because credit reporting agencies routinely act and actively collect data on businesses from a variety of public and private sources, your business may already have a credit file, even if you are unaware of the existence. So, if you need that the file doesn't exist, order a business credit card. So, you want to really order a business credit report so you can review it for inaccuracies. Okay, you can see what works, what doesn't work, and so you can fix things right off the bat. So that's really cool. So here's the epilogue into this conversation. I just shared with you 40 years of business credit knowledge. I'll give you the overview, the top trends, the extras, and now the epilogue. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.